close look at how it is that system is going to be sustained and how it is that that service can continue to be provided in Washougal. As part of that evaluation, a cost analysis was done for our share of the system to identify truly what the costs are of providing that fully staffed ALS ambulance 24 hours a day in the community. And what that analysis revealed to us is that the remittance from the revenues to Camas on our behalf is falling short of the actual cost of providing that service, $200,000 or so on an annual basis. So as far as I know, that is the first precise costing analysis that's been done for what it costs to provide that in the very recent past. So we've had some conversations. The administrations of the two cities have been having a conversation, and the result of that conversation is that the Washougal administration, the mayor, has tentatively agreed, subject to your concurrence as part of the budget, to commit $150,000 of those supplanting dollars, those restricted EMS revenues, into the system in order to maintain the level of service in the community. It's an appropriate use of the funds. Again, these are restricted funds, but needed to make sure you were tracking with us and clear on how this came about. Obviously, this potentially an issue moving into the future. It's not just a 2011 issue, it's an issue moving into the future. There'll be some ending fund balance in Fund 125, which is the number we're giving this fund. So the administrations of the two cities and staff will continue to work together, looking forward to make sure that we've got an equitable arrangement. And there's a lot of moving parts to that. The consolidation discussions certainly are informative to that. But we may need to look at the interlocal agreement. We may need to look at level of service. We may need to look at what our levies are in the future. It's just another challenge, as you can imagine, that communities are facing, and this one is facing us as well, in addition to all the rest of our general fund issues.
Dave, could we sometime in the first quarter of 2011 maybe have a workshop that's devoted to EMS and fire, and so we understand, because I mean the 150K payment, so that's not only the levy lid lift funding, but additional funding, correct?
It is.
Actually, it's part of that. When you look at the funds that are brought in, we have the original 50-cent levy that we just renewed, that we're taking a diminished amount on, that we're getting in, plus the levy lid lift as well. So basically, all of those funds aren't going to the city of Camas. Right now, Dave, what's the number that we're bringing in?
It's got about $600,000. That was that supplanting
No.
monies that were from those levies.
But the funds that we bring in every year off of the two levies, 600 and some odd thousand.
Oh, the contribution, what we remit to Camas.
What we remit to Camas is only like 430,
430.
but we collect well over $600,000 from those funds. So and it was always meant to happen that way. That's part of what helps us fund at least 2 firefighters on duty all times to roll in those rigs, all those types of things. What's happening in this now, though, is over and above with what happened in 2008, with the whole decision on ambulance, AMR, City of Camas, on and on and on. The kind of the sticking point in there is their agreement to actually house an ambulance over here. They would still, even regardless of our $150,000 payment, they would still have ambulances available to us just as they were 2 years ago. But there wouldn't necessarily be one stationed here inside the city. And that's where that level of service starts coming into play on the whole thing. When you look at the amount that just our diminished amount coming in off of the levies themselves, what the library bond took away from their Camas's, as Dave noted, they're in the same position everybody else is. ECFR, same thing. Their assessed valuations are down, so the amounts of money coming in off of that to fund everything everybody thought was always going to be there is getting smaller. At the same time, ECFR's pulled back another $500,000 a year, which just adds to that. What we've attempted to do after talking with Camus on what their other proposals may be to try and keep that EMS service solvent, after going through those different scenarios, is when we started some serious discussions about the supplanted funds, and, we've been trying to find some appropriate use to use those for. We went out to the voters and asked for them to maintain medical services within the city of Washougal. I don't believe that there's really a responsible way we can go through and cover truly what the shortfall is, if you want to put it that way, on what it costs to fund that ambulance over here versus what we're giving to the system now. And that's why we approached the city of Camus with a $150,000 payment instead of the full amount of what we're missing in between there, hoping that over a 3-year period we can help basically buoy that system but still keep the level of service in Washougal where it is today.
So you're anticipating only doing it for 3 years?
That's all the longer that supplanted funds with what we have plans for now will sustain themselves. At some point, we've got the decision coming into 2013 on whether we go out for continuing that levy lid lift or not. The supplanted funds almost likely will not. Anybody's guess whether that same scenario that created those supplanting funds are still going to be there. I would venture to guess that the economic storm that was on the upswing that created those funds isn't going to be there to do that again. Jennifer?
Yeah, these restricted revenue EMS funds, where have they been sitting this whole time?
They were actually, well, I don't know, RJ, we've never actually moved those, correct?
Well, when we passed the latest amendment that created the EMS fund to move that 600,000, but they've been sitting really as, we've identified them as a line item as EMS levy tax
Right.
money. They've been sitting in general fund reserves.
General fund reserves.
Yeah.
Okay. So this restricted revenue, there's no restrictions as far as a reserve. I mean, this can be collected and spent 100%
On EMS.
on EMS.
I'm still not quite clear. This is a one-time payment, and we do not expect to make this a payment anytime again in the next 3 years?
I would suspect we're going to make this payment for 3 years.
Every
Make
year.
the same payment. So that means that our EMS service is costing us 20,000 short of the 600,000 that we're getting, which means that how are we going to pay for the fire department things that we were paying for from that fund?
Those are actually still being paid. What you've got on the supplanted funds, what we've calculated in the supplanting funds over a number of different avenues of getting there, if you'll recall, those funds originally started out, they were pegged at about $1.4 million. Paul went backwards in part of his scope of work and actually identified $700,000, $800,000 of costs that the city has had since 2007 that weren't allocated towards those funds that could have been. And that's where we spent some of that down